Ahmed, why did you not show to your interview with blank today? Hello. Did the time get changed? I have it on my calendar for 5 p.m. Eastern in about 30 minutes. You're an idiot and super unreliable. It's no wonder you did not finish college. You've wasted many people's valuable time. I won't work with you again and will do my best to make sure other recruiters and companies know the same. I sent you all of this information multiple times, text, email, etc., and you confirmed it. Shame on you. Hello, recruiter. I'm sure you're watching this video because I know how people like you are. You're not feeling the shame you should be because what you did here to poor Ahmed is beyond unacceptable. I've never seen a recruiter like this in my life. I can't believe this was real. When I first saw this on my feed on Twitter, I just didn't believe it. I thought this was fake. And then when I saw the follow-ups and I reached out to Ahmed, because he's a phenomenal community member, and talked all about it, what the hell? The fact that this person not only is real, but runs a recruiting agency is absurd. And I'm not normally the cancellation type, but I'm not going to do my usual efforts to go out of my way to hide this person's name because they should feel shame because they should not be a recruiter if they're capable of doing things like this. Let's talk a bit about this, the absurdity that's gone on, the poor experience that Ahmed's had, everyone's comments, and most importantly, how to not suck as a recruiter because what the actual hell? Anyways, let's keep reading these messages because it only gets worse from here. This is an incredibly unprofessional response. If it's true that the time isn't correct, I understand why this may seem unprofessional on my end, is the implication here. But to berate someone with insults is incredibly unprofessional. I will be contacting the company that he's recruiting for accordingly. You never picked up or returned calls, confirmed with myself and in turn E7, and no-showed for an interview. You even played dumb after you missed the interview. You put me in an uncomfortable situation with my client and their hiring manager, and you couldn't care less about wasting others' time. You need to grow up and remove your narcissistic personality from the professional world. Take responsibility. Your actions impacted many people's valuable time. I'm about to impact many more people's time by going over this, man, and you're not going to like the results because there's only one narcissistic personality in display in these messages. This is possibly the single biggest projection I've ever seen in text screenshots, including like a bickering, breaking up couple. This is insane. Like, what in any of the comms here on the blue bubbles could possibly be perceived as narcissistic? Are you kidding? Ahmed could not have handled this better. In fact, if I was part of the company that this person was recruiting for and I saw this, I would immediately fast track him because he handled the comms here great. I'm biased because I know Ahmed really well. If you're not already familiar, he's been making awesome memes for the community for a while. He made the dark mode as the best site. And when we had an issue with people putting inappropriate stuff in the messaging here, he fixed it in like an hour. So I know he knows how to do stuff. I know he understands the community. I know he's on top of shit. I'd make the argument that Ahmed's already done everything he should to be a very, very hireable person. He showed he understands what's going on. He has built really cool things. He's addressed important feedback, and he's really responsive and in tune with how this ecosystem works. He is pretty much as hireable as you can get. Doesn't matter that he has a degree or not. He's here, he's showing code, he's partaking in important conversations, he's building cool shit. He gets it. And that's a really hard thing to demonstrate. Something I want to emphasize throughout this for those of y'all who are looking to get jobs is do what Ahmed did. Be part of the community, have fun with it, be around, and show that you get it. You can't build something like this if you don't at least get it a bit. You wouldn't have built something like this if you didn't get it. And he built this within minutes of me making the dark mode announcement. So clearly he gets it. He also has all of these funny memes and like, yeah, sure, memes don't mean you're a good dev. But if your memes deeply understand dynamics within the community, they mean you get more than average. Pay for dark mode or draw 20. I deserve the L here, but yeah. As I'm trying to emphasize here, Ahmed did everything right, which is why I'm here to screw it up, because I am very, very mad at the individual who did all of this. I have years of industry experience, yet I still saw the value in going to college to get some foundational knowledge in CS. I finished in a month too, at that. It was clear from the beginning that he liked being in a position of power. This is a very, very good read. Also, I didn't know that you were in school and about to graduate. That's really cool too, considering how much you've already been in industry and get it. You're doing great here. Also, Ahmed's in chat and just pointed out something I didn't even notice. I didn't swear at him. He had to use his patience. You did a great job. You handled this so well that it makes it very easy for me to be the asshole instead, because Ahmed did a great job of being the nice guy throughout the situation. Like, I really want to emphasize, these messages are great. Hello, did the time get changed? I have it on my calendar for 5 Eastern in 30 minutes. This is very important, especially if the calendar invite was sent by them, which almost always it should be. A little small thing, but it's a point I make. Whenever I'm meeting with somebody, especially if they're in a different time zone, I make them send me an invite, because otherwise shit like this happens and they'll often try and blame you for it. Not too often. Usually people are pretty fair with these understandings, but the fact that they didn't send him a calendar invite with this is insulting. And he just specified in chat, there was no invite. It was just a regular email. email. And that email definitely said 5 Eastern, right? Like you've confirmed that you had the right time. Even if you had the wrong time, it isn't a big deal. But I'm just curious because it seems like you actually had the right time. Is my understanding there correct? No, it was actually 4. Okay. And that's a totally reasonable misunderstanding. Like I have made that mistake a billion times. But if they didn't send a calendar invite, they should probably expect it. Regardless, small, totally understandable mistake. And I am positive, just knowing you, that if the response that they gave was, yeah, it was supposed to be at 4 p.m., you would have responded very apologetically. But there was no opportunity given. You gave an opportunity here for them to correct you and give you additional information. But instead of take the opportunity to do anything correctly, this recruiter was just an asshole, just nonstop asshole. And I don't think this person should have this job. I hate to do this type of thing, but I really don't like them. Specifically, I don't like their apology. I know you are cool with this, Ahmed, and I massively appreciate that you made the kind tweet because this person replied and apologized and that you don't feel spiteful to them. You hope all recruiters see devs as human and all devs view recruiters as human. Yep, I agree. And honestly, for the most part, I've had pretty good experiences with recruiters. I've met a few that were actually incredible. I feel the same about project managers though, so you might not be able to trust my takes. I know every eng seems to hate PMs, but I've had really good PMs in my history. Regardless, this guy is not good at anything, it seems. I appreciate Ahmed's attempt to tell us to not go too hard on him. I'm going to, because this is one of the worst apologies I've ever seen. I've seen the Twitter posts, and I apologize for my manner today. I am sick with the flu, was taking medication, and acted impulsively and rudely. I have so many issues with this reply, it's hard to put into words. So Ahmed sent me the whole text, and I actually feel sick. I hopefully don't have to explain all of the issues with this, but I'm going to because this is my job. So you can very clearly see here, he is not sorry. You can see that he's not sorry because of the speed at which he goes into, would you please take these down mode. The thing I want to emphasize with this impulse bit is that I've never in my life had the impulse to send a message like this to somebody who I was recruiting or trying to hire. That's insane. If this is something that is an impulse for you, if this is something that you feel makes sense ever, that this just spurred out of you, insane. The fact that you could feel this way, that this is an appropriate thing to do, enough so to say it and describe it as an impulse. If you have impulses like this, your job should not be comms. Another good point that was just made in chat is that your impulses shouldn't be messages that are this long and insane. Because every time you write another word, you have a chance to realize what the fuck you're doing and delete it. And he took however many words are here that he typed, and I'm assuming on his phone because it's iMessage. Every single one of these words wasn't the one that he realized what he was doing. So not only did he have the impulse to do something this toxic, he didn't have any reservations before hitting send. I don't care how fucked up you are. I don't care if you're like drunk or on drugs or whatever. If this is something that can come out of you, makes no sense. Another really good point from chat, like an impulse would be like, fuck you or something. Totally agree. Like if it's a short little, like you just get angry and you're like, what the fuck? Like a lot of what I'm doing here could be argued as impulsive because I'm just letting out the frustration I'm feeling, but I'm choosing to do that because I understand the severity of the situation. I did not know that Ahmed was fasting for Ramadan and still showed humility and respect. Are you kidding? So Ahmed hasn't eaten for days and he was still more humble than the chaos that this recruiter is doing. Are you kidding? Are you actually kidding? This is embarrassing. I hate to use my platform to be like, this guy should be unemployed, but I do not harass, by the way. If I see any single person from this community harassing this individual, you're just as bad, if not worse than him. I just want to be very, very clear that what he did was unacceptable. And ideally, when people Google search his name, these things come up because you should not hire him as a recruiter because he is not competent to be a recruiter, as we see in his texts here. He briefly apologized, immediately justifies, through the justification, indicates that this is something that like occurs in his head a lot with the impulse line. And that's why he was rude. No. Here's an example of an acceptable format of this apology. Ahmed, I sincerely would like to apologize for the way I reached out to you today. That was beyond unacceptable, especially as a response to a meaningful, reasonable misunderstanding. I am entirely in the wrong here. I should never have done that, and I am sincerely, genuinely sorry. I totally understand if you never want to speak with me again. I know I wouldn't, but if you are down, I would love to help out, making sure you can get a job and that no other opportunities are missed due to my bad conduct. That would be a phenomenal response. But please take the post down is just the narcissism he was complaining about before. This is insane. If your job is people, then you should know how to apologize to people, especially if you have impulses to do shit like this. Okay, controversial take. I'm going to knock engineers down a peg quick too. The average engineer is less socially apt than the average person. I think we can all agree with that, right? We all understand that most engineers are worse at socializing than most everyone else. Like no one, I'm just going to open chat to show that like no one's disagreeing with me when I say that, right? True, 100%. Yep. Like the average engineer is worse at socialization than the average non-engineer. Hopefully it's not controversial. Hopefully we can all agree about that. That doesn't mean you can't be an engineer who's good at talking. It doesn't mean you can be a non-engineer that's bad, but the average for non-engineers is slightly better. The reason I bring that up is it has resulted in a bar being slightly lower. I'm going to give a weird example of what I'm trying to emphasize here, which was my college experience. When I was in high school, I didn't love English class. I started in high school in like the non-honors English, but I got bored pretty quick because I don't hate writing. It just wasn't my favorite thing. So I eventually bumped up to be in honors English and eventually ended up recording videos for one of my classes. And that's kind of how I got here. So obviously promoting myself up to the harder English class. So I had those projects ended up being huge for me. But I still was not a great writer compared to my peers. Even in high school, I was surrounded with people who cared a lot more about writing and they could write circles around me. I would often rely on them to proof my papers and stuff like that. Then I went to college, and I went to RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, a school even nerdier than it sounds. RPI is like an absolute pile of engineers that are socially inept. I think the gender ratio in the Eng department I was in, which was CS, was like 9-1. Yeah, it was chaos. And the average person there was way less socially apt, and importantly, way worse with words. I was used to just barely getting by in my honors English classes and relying on my peers. By the time I was in college, since the bar had been lowered for quality of writing, because engineers suck at writing, I suddenly looked like a superstar. And I'll never forget the day where we had our final project for my, it wasn't IT and society, it was some like societal impact of technologies class. And we were supposed to be working on our paper for the whole semester. It was like our term paper. I started writing it at 1 a.m. the night before it was due. Well, the night it was due, because it was due at 8 a.m. in the morning. So I had 7 hours where I wrote this whole paper. I had an outline that I'd gotten approved and I started from scratch. And even then, wrote this whole thing in 7 hours in a panic, handed it in, barely could stay awake during class. A few weeks later, the teacher comes in, professor's clearly very upset. Like she just doesn't look happy. She stands up to start class, looks at us all and says, "I hope you guys know how disappointed I am. I've seen some terrible papers in my time teaching this class, and I've never seen anything like this. Normally I would curve, but I chose not to because I need y'all to understand just how bad these papers were." She goes around handing out the papers and their grades, hands me mine, face down, says we should talk after class. My heart is racing. I am in such a panic. I barely remember writing this because I did it in a diluted state at night. Perfect score. I somehow got a perfect score on that paper. At the time, I was like, oh my God, I'm a god writer. I'm so good at communication. What I've learned since then is I'm okay at communication. I'm just comically better than average for an engineer. And that's the thing I want to emphasize here, is that the bar for quality of writing and communication in engineering is very low because the average engineer is not good at those things. I bring that up because the average engineer would be a shitty recruiter, which is why we have non-engineers doing our recruiting. And that is why things like what we just saw can happen in the first place. Because no socially competent person would ever do this type of thing. But since the bar for engineering, and in this case, engineering recruiting, is so much lower, and a recruiter has to be social because they're talking to people and like gauging interest and doing all these things. Engineers on average will be bad at this because they're not social enough. And if they're good enough at being social, they can climb the ranks as an eng really fast because being able to talk as an engineer is a superpower. If I've learned anything from my career, it's that. If I've learned anything from my channel blowing up, it's that. This person is not socially apt enough to be a recruiter in any field. But the bar for being a recruiter in tech is much lower than other places because the bar for socialization in tech is the floor. The only reason this person could get far enough to start this agency in the first place is because the bar is too low in engineering. And that sucks. I'm going to say something people aren't going to like, but I really think engineers should take more classes on things like communication, writing, and these types of things, because we need to know what bad communication is, and more importantly, what good communication is. We need to learn how to take ownership, how to apologize for things, how to prevent shit like this from happening. Because if we can raise our bar for communication, we can keep people like this from feeling welcome in the industry, because this person should not be welcome in the space that we're occupying. So once again, I am emphasizing, do not harass this individual. My goal here isn't to drive a bunch of hatred towards him. My goal is to raise awareness of the fact that there are socially inept people in the space doing shit like this, and we need to raise our bar and our expectations to keep this from ever happening again. Imagine if poor Ahmed wasn't an experienced developer with a platform on Twitter and the ability to do things like this. Imagine he was a new grad or somebody who just dropped out because they had an offer, and then that offer got rescinded, and now they're looking for a new job. Imagine at that point, somebody like Jordan did something like this. We might lose you in the industry entirely. I even want to think about the number of people Jordan might have caused to leave software dev forever. Because if you're not a really talented, thoughtful, capable, and out there dev like Ahmed, the messages that were sent here might have actually removed you from the industry entirely. And I don't want that. I don't want that at all. Apparently, this is not the first time either. As Ahmed's been pointing out, multiple people who experienced the exact same thing have reached out to him. Apparently, this particular guy also berated a previous CEO of his that fired him. The reason he's a one-man company is he can't work with people. Yep, that checks out. And I feel bad for doing this, but I have a feeling he's going to be very, very upset when this video comes out. But if that even slightly reduces the chance that somebody else has to go through this was the right call. So I decided, do I want to go through the comments on this Reddit post? Who the hell pissed in this guy's cereal to give such a wanker response? He just got out of that $18,000 retreat about becoming a man. I think that's all I have to say about this one. It is honestly horrifying to see how people do recruiting so wrong. I talked a bit about how you can do it right. Definitely check out my videos about getting a job if you haven't already seen them. The tech space is a little harder than it's ever been to actually get a job in. But that doesn't mean these toxic recruiting things are okay. Let me know in the comments what you think about the situation. Am I overreacting, or is this as absurd as I seem to think it is? And until next time, peace, nerds.